An Englishman answer to nobody. And therefore, it has to be our fault, and we have to take personal responsibility if we're going to save this country, save our families, and have a better life. When we will learn that the answer to all our problems is a smaller government with less taxes, with less responsibility, that's the answer.
Hello everyone, I am very excited to be joined by Nick Buckley today, and Nick had invited me on his channel, I think literally just a week ago, and I thought, you know what, it's very important that I invite you on mine as well, because I would love to hear from you. So because our audience is global, I'd love for you to please introduce yourself first, although I'm sure many people recognize you within the UK, but if you could do that first and then we will delve right into it. Thank you.
Sure. My name's Nick Buckley, born and raised in Manchester, done all sorts of things, run charities, worked for governments, and now I'm a political figure now in the UK.
Yes, I was reading about you, and I believe you're a political candidate representing Reform.
I was 4
Okay.
years ago. I stood for Reform 3-4 years ago. And then at the last mayor election in Greater Manchester, I stood as an independent and I came third.
Cool, fantastic. So what has led you to go into politics?
It's a bit of a story. I've always been interested in politics, because politics affects our lives. Everything that happens in our countries is down to politics, either incompetence or by design or by mistake, but all involves politics. And you're a fool if you think it doesn't. Hence why everyone needs to vote. Even if you vote for the least worst candidate, that's better than the worst candidate, surely. But things changed for me in 2020. We had a death of George Floyd in America. Black Lives Matter came to the front in the UK. And I said to myself, oh, who are Black Lives Matter? I think I'd heard of the organisation. I wasn't sure. So I Googled it, found their website, read what they put on their website. And I went, I don't like the sound of any of this. These are Marxists. These are communists. They want to defund the police. They want to overthrow capitalism. But the one thing that really got my back up was when they said they want to deconstruct the Western nuclear family. And I looked at that and I thought, they're all English words. And I know what each word means, but I don't know what it means when you put them together in a sentence like that. Destruct the Western nuclear family. And I gave it some thought and realized what they mean is we need less fathers in the home. That's what that means. And I just spent 20 years working for councils, working for the charities I've set up, working with young people, mainly boys, about avoiding crime, about not being dragged into criminal organisations. And the biggest problem we've got in the UK is fatherless homes. And we've got an organisation pretending to be anti-racist, pretending to care. And one of their top 4 aims is to get rid of the family unit and get more men out the house. And that's when I went, no. I need to tell people about this because everyone just thinks it's a new organisation and it's all about the death of a career criminal in America. So I wrote a 700-word blog, put it on my personal blog page, and it was fine for a week or two. Some people agreed with me. Some people didn't agree with me about what I discovered about Black Lives Matter. Then someone copied the link and put it on Twitter and all hell broke loose within hours. Within hours, I was a Nazi. I'm a racist. And don't forget, 6 months before, I'd just been awarded an MBE off the late Queen of England for my charity work and stopping kids of all colours, all religions. I've been working in the most deprived parts of Greater Manchester for decades. So I went from an MBE to a Nazi in 3 hours. That's quite a fall. The board of my charity panicked, who I appointed. They sacked me over email to save their own necks, basically. I decided I wasn't having that. I fought back. I made the board resign. We appointed a new board and they offered me my job back, which I took for a year. And then I left after that. That was a 5-week period. And that politicized me quite a lot. It made me realize that if somebody with my reputation, with my background, with my knowledge, And my good work, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but my good work over 2 decades, if I can be vilified, if I can be cancelled for saying something that's true and then being lucky and fighting back, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And that's when I realized my fight's not over. I need to help destroy this woke mindset. I need to help fight to save this country that I love called England, called Great Britain, because it's slowly dying. And one of the reasons why we're slowly dying is because of weak English men. Weak English men are allowing all of this to happen. And it's easy to blame other people. It's easy to say it's all immigrants' fault. It's easy to say it's the woke ideology. It's Marx's fault. It's this, it's that. It's poor politicians. And that's all correct to a certain extent. But sitting above all that are Englishmen. And Englishmen answer to nobody. And therefore, it has to be our fault. And we have to take personal responsibility if we're going to save this country, save our families, and have a better life. And that's what I've been fighting for now for the last 3-4 years.
So, and I would say I very much agree with what you're saying. And I would say that the system seems to be broken to the extent where it is creating the product of this broken system, broken Britain, is weak men, basically, right? Of course, in this country, predominantly the men are English, in England anyway. So, and so I do agree with you that even if we take the grooming gangs example, like this has been going on for decades and decades and decades. It's not like it's now we should be surprised. Oh, this has happened. But why has it been allowed to go on? Because if it's going on for decades, that means it's being allowed to continue for decades, right? And what I always do is I always do condemn, of course, anyone who's involved, anyone in the Pakistani community, and I don't hesitate to condemn. But even I'm thinking, do you know, hold on, if this is going on for decades and someone's allowing it to go on, and the majority of people in this country are not Muslim, they're not Pakistanis, like, come on, like, why are people not manning up, basically, right? And then if you scratch the surface, then you'll see that actually the police officers are involved, social services were involved, and MPs are involved. And all these people are not necessarily Muslims, Pakistanis. This is a network of, I don't know, pedophilia ring or whatever you want to call it. And there's bad stuff going on. People are scratching each other's back, basically. And that's why it's so important. I feel that the good people unite, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a good person, you want well for this country, then look past the race, religion, all that kind of stuff. Just work together, because the people that are out to get all of us, the common person, there are quite a lot of them. And you've mentioned the Black Lives Matter and your experience as an example. And I would say, yes, there are vultures out there. There are bullies, and they are not scared of voicing or having a voice and going after anybody and silencing people. And it will take brave people like yourself, for example, to come out and basically fight back. But for anyone who's listening, Nick can't do it all by himself. We all have a part to play. So
can I just jump in there? Let me give you an example of weak Englishmen about the grooming gangs, because you're absolutely right. We have pedophiles in all organisations, in all religions, in all communities, and I've had quite a few arrested and prosecuted. They're all white men, so we have it in every community. But why did the grooming gangs happen, and why did it happen over 50 years, and why is it not even stopped today? And it's because of weak white Englishmen. The first reason is we were thrown out of our families. You know, single mothers didn't want men in the house because they got more benefits off the state. Feminism told the women that you didn't need a man anymore. It doesn't matter your children need a father. That doesn't matter. It's all about you being strong, independent women. Men allowed that to happen. The girls who were targeted in the grooming gang scandals most of them were targeted because they didn't have a father at home. Because if you don't have a father at home, your natural protector in the world isn't there. And therefore, you're easier prey. You're easy meat. Because if you're messing with a girl who has a father at home, you're potentially risking violence because you don't know what that father's going to do. I'll tell you what fathers would have done 50 years ago. They'd have took a baseball bat and they would have smashed some people's heads in and gone to jail. That's what would have happened 50 years ago. But what happens today is we have weak Englishmen going, oh, the police arrested me when I tried to get my daughter back and it's not really my fault. And it's like, you're the father. Yes, it is your fault. I'm not saying it's completely your fault, but if it takes some people to have to go to jail to stop the abuse of our children, then English men should be queuing up to go to jail. Because if we cannot protect our children, then what hope have we got for the country? And I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for riots, nothing like that. But I know for a fact, if that happened to my daughter, there's nothing in the world that would stop me getting my daughter out of that house. Nothing in the world that would stop me administering some justice to those men involved, regardless of who those men are. But men have become weak. We've become semi-socialists. We're always looking at the state to fix our problems. I pay my taxes. The police should be doing this. No, take some personal responsibility and protect yourself, your children, your family, your community, and your nation. That's what we need men in all nations, but living in this country, that's what we need men to start doing and holding our politicians to account.
Definitely. And I would say that I've never tagged or classified myself as a feminist, although, of course, anyone who's a woman and she's not getting paid for the same job, of course, I will support her in that. But I don't call myself a feminist because I feel like, sadly, that indirectly for me sometimes can imply that you need men to be less manly. And I like men manly and masculinity. However, I do not support toxic masculinity. I think what is lacking nowadays is men, when they be men, they are told to not be men, basically. They get told off for being manly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're falsely tagged as toxic masculinity. Some people are toxic, but not everyone. So I feel like I do feel bad for men because they are under a lot of pressure, basically. And yes, women are much more independent, and therefore there is more pressure on men to kind of, prove their worth in that sense, right? Because before, women used to give birth and they would sit at home, look after the children, and a man would work. So that's the man proving his worth, like I'm paying all the bills. And now that's not the case, right? So there's pros and cons to this, but I do agree with you. But if you're going to the police and you're a father whose child has been groomed and they are not taking you seriously, instead of putting the guy in jail, the groomer, they're coming after you. Do you really blame the fathers? Like, why is the system so broken? How have we got to this stage?
Nothing works in our country anymore. It's been breaking slowly all my life, and I'm 56. It's been slowly declining all my life. It's been declining for at least 100 years. The UK declines at least 100 years old. Nothing works. So the police don't work. And there's many reasons why the police don't work. One of the first things I would say is feminism helped destroy the police because suddenly we need more female police officers. So what did we do to make sure more women joined the police? We lowered the recruitment bar to make more women pass the physical and make more women join the police. And once we lowered the bar, that meant weak, pathetic, fat, unfit males can join the police as well. So we started lowering the bar. And then we needed to lower the bar even further so we could get ethnic minorities to join the police. So we lowered, because that's not because ethnic minorities can't be good police officers, because I've trained police officers, some are fantastic. But in some ethnic minority communities, their parents are telling their children to be solicitors, dentists, doctors. So the ones who'd make good police officers are going into those professions. So we've got to lower the bar to get ethnic minorities who don't make good police officers become good police officers, and that's why the police are failing. I've got loads of examples of how this has happened. And then at the same time, after the Second World War, we started becoming a semi-socialist state, where the state has just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I worked for government for a decade, and if you don't want to believe in conspiracy theories, the best thing to do is go work for government. Because once you've worked for government and you've seen the incompetence and you've seen the waste, it stops you believing conspiracy theories, because everything that goes wrong, everything that people think is a conspiracy, it's just pure incompetence. I've seen it at a huge level, and everything's just crumbling away. And the answer seems to be we need bigger government, and we need to give them more money, and we need to give them more responsibility. When will we learn that the answer to all our problems is a smaller government with less taxes, with less responsibility? That's the answer. But yeah, the police have failed. The police, I want some senior police officers in jail for the cover-up of the grooming gangs, because that's what happened. They were covered up because their political masters we're telling them, I'm going to lose votes if this comes out about Pakistani grooming gangs. I'm going to lose that vote. And if you cover it up, I'll make sure that you might get promoted. And that's what went on in the police. And I'm 100% sure of that. But how do we change this broken system? And that's a question we're asking around, the West now. And again, I go back to the answer starts with strong Englishmen. It has to start with us. It can't just be excuses, pointing the finger, blaming everybody else without looking inside us and saying to ourselves, what did we ever do? We've all known about the grooming gangs for at least 20 years. I've known for longer, but most people don't. What did you do in those 20 years? Did you ever write to your MP? Did you ever do a demonstration? What have you ever done about the government taking more and more of our money in taxes every year? What have you ever done? And the answer to all those questions is we all did nothing. We allowed it all to happen. And until we get over that mindset, nothing's going to improve.
Definitely. I think it is an uphill battle because it's just not one thing broken. It's so many things. And I think I gave example of course, children, the educational system, everything that should be protecting children. And that is where, the seed is the seed is so important, right? If you manage the seed properly, then that seed will, of course, grow into a tree. So where we have broken adults is because the whole educational system and we're failing children at childhood, basically. So for me, that, of course, being a parent of 2 children, I can see this for myself. And I think that's why I am getting involved in this kind of stuff now, because I do fear for the future of my children in this country, generally, but also because of the image of Muslims and Pakistanis as well. And I feel like the fact that we're just allowing any Tom, Dick and Harry to continuously come here, I feel as if I can work my ass off. I'm a higher rate taxpayer, have been for a long time. But that won't mean anything because in 10 years' time, the image of Muslims and Pakistanis will still be shit. Yeah. And the reason it will be shit is because we're allowing, with all due respect, like the worst of the worst to come in here. Like, why are we allowing the worst and the worst to come here? Like, do we not have any self-respect? Do we not have any standards, basically? Usually when you're in the first world country, if you were to open doors for any immigrants, it should be the cream of the crop, right? We want skilled people. We want intelligent people. We want smart people who are going to help us improve our economy, take our country to the next level. Instead, we've got the very opposite. And this is another topic. Like, we've known about this. Immigration it's not a new thing. It's not that we're talking about this in 2025. This is like decades and decades and decades. Nigel Farage has been banging on about it for a long time. So again, it's a question like, and why, what part do politicians not get? Like, yeah, I just don't understand why do you think they're not tackling this the way they need to? Immigration.
Because it's difficult. And there is some short-term gains with mass immigration, but there's lots of long-term problems. Now, what most people don't know, most people think the beginning of mass immigration from the late 40s and 50s was fine, and that was all hunky-dory. None of that's true. The white working class of this country have never wanted immigration. So we had the Windrush boat land in 1948, which is seen as the beginning of this. 2 years later, in 1950, the government had to set up a special committee to look at immigration because the people in those areas didn't want any more immigration. That was 2 years after Windrush. But nobody wanted to address it because you get short-term benefits of an increase in the productivity of a country. You get more people spending. Some people are bringing money into the country. So they're short-term benefits. And what's killing our system are politicians who only ever looking at short-term gains. And the reason why they look at short-term gains is because they work on a 4-year political cycle. They all want to be voted in again. What's the point of me spending all my time improving the country that won't take effect for 2 decades from now? I won't even be in politics. I need something to look good in 3 years because I'm up for election again and I want to be voted in again. So that's why our politicians keep making short-term decisions and why a lot of them support mass immigration. Now, we need to move away from discussions of why do we have mass immigration, or from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, because we've had it People are here. I'm here because of mass immigration. You're here because of mass immigration. We're not going to deport everybody who is a descendant of an immigrant. It's just not going to happen, and shouldn't happen, because all those people, most of those people came here legally. So why do we punish people for following the law? But what we need to do now is have a national discussion where we say it ends. This experiment of mass migration ends. So we need to close the borders. We need to almost virtually stop all immigration for several reasons. The first reason is it doesn't benefit this country anymore now. It may have done decades ago, but all the stats are out now. It doesn't benefit us at all. It's a net drain on this country. It's also a drain on the country these people are coming from, because immigration steals the best of them, the richest of them. So we wonder why the third world is still the third world. We wonder why Pakistan is a failing country. It's because anybody with intelligence, with education, with money, they all flee. And then we leave those countries in the worst situation. Mass immigration is the modern version of the slave trade, where the rich countries steal people from around the world. Our NHS is a slave organisation. Our NHS goes around the world stealing medical staff from the poorest countries in the world, and we leave them poorer, in worse health. And then we pretend we're doing something fantastic. We're making the world poorer. So we need to stop mass migration, and then we need to look at the job shortages. We've got something like 9.5 million people unemployed in the UK. 9.5 million people, not all on job seekers, but not working. 9.5 million people. There's your jobs market. If we spent money training them, pushing them off benefits, building the confidence, making sure the new young people leaving school aren't going on benefits, investing in technology. People say, oh, we need mass migration for all the crap jobs. No, we don't. There's machines now that pick strawberries. Robots with 20 arms go around just picking strawberries off bushes. Technology exists for all that, which will get rid of 100 jobs and just create 2 well-paid jobs maintaining the robots. That's what we need to be doing. And then we look, we need migrants to wipe the backsides of our old people. Well, really? Is that what we think of migrants? And is that what we think of old people? That we import, foreigners to look after them? Well, the answer is no. The first thing we need to do is take personal responsibility for our old people. It's on the last 20, 30 years we've started dumping them in homes. We treat them like refuge. We take no responsibility for our elderly grandparents. They're a hindrance to us now. But do you know what? When they die, we want the house, though. We'll have the house off them when they're dead, but we're not willing to look after them. So we need to start addressing that as a nation. And we also need to looking at care work. We need to look at care work like we do nurses. We need to look at them and go, you're like an angel, aren't you? We need to pay you like a nurse, and we need to train you like nurses. And when you tell people that you're a carer in a home, we should all go, oh, you're amazing. But at the moment, we just go, oh, you wipe bums for a living, do you? We disrespect the job. We wonder why people don't want to go into that work. All our job vacancies, all our problems can be solved in this country. It just takes some out-the-box thinking. It takes people with a backbone, and it takes politicians with some grit and determination, who I call statespeople. We need statesmen and stateswomen in the United Kingdom now. We've got too many politicians, and the difference is this. A politician just cares about their job and their career and climbing that greasy pole. A statesman, a stateswoman looks at their country and goes, I'm going to do what's best for my country. And if that ends my career, well, that's fine, because I know I've left my country in a slightly better situation when I found it. They're the sort of people we need leading this country. People who put the country first. People who don't do it for the credit, for the accolade. People who do it because they love the country and they've bought into this country, and their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will benefit from this country. That's who we need in Parliament. We need less career politicians.
And I agree with that. I sometimes don't understand what the people who are in politics are doing. Like, why have they come? Because it does seem as if I'd like to think they've come for the right reasons, but I guess actions speak louder than words, and they need to put their money where the mouth is. So I think I've been very disappointed with them. I would say you've raised some really good points, and I was just taking notes because I think what you've mentioned is that we need to take responsibility ourselves. and we need to develop basically the infrastructure, right, in different areas, different departments, to be able to be sustainable within ourselves without any outside intervention, having, being dependent on migrants, for example. And then also we need a change of attitude alongside that, because we can develop the infrastructure, we can start taking responsibility, but also change our own attitude, whether that's towards children, elderly, men in the house, fathers, etc. And what we're really talking about is, if we start doing this now, this will take us decades. Because if you're saying that we've been declining for the last 100 years, how long do you think it will take us to get to, if we started now, how long do you think it would take us to get to where you would wish for us to be?
Oh, great question. I have no idea. All I know is, if you're going if you can aim for what you want, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there, as long as you can see progress every day, every year, that you're slightly closer to where you're trying to go. Because once you start that journey, and the country starts that journey, it will attract people more intelligent than me, better leaders than me, better politicians, more people involved, and then things start speeding up, and that attracts more people. The next thing you know, it might take a couple of years we make a couple of steps, but suddenly we're jumping yards at a time. And then within a year, we've solved everything, because everything just takes off. I'm tired of people telling me, there's no point, Nick. This country's over. This country's finished. If I could afford it, I'd leave. And I say to them, you sound just like a coward, mate. That's what you sound like. You sound just like a coward. You sound like all those cowards in 1939 who wanted to do a deal with Hitler and the Nazis because they thought England and UK was finished. You sound like, we've always had cowards. It's a human trait. And I don't want to listen to cowards anymore. I want some inspiration and aspiration. I want a dream. People can live through hard times if they know better times are coming for them, their children, or their grandchildren. We need politicians to sell us a vision of where they're taking us. And it is going to be hard, because we've got decades of mistakes to overcome. But do you know what? We're a hardy people. We're an island people. We've got over worse than this before. The Spanish tried to invade us 3 times with the Armada. Napoleon was off the coast waiting for a summer's day to sail the boats across, but the weather saved us. 1970s, we're almost a communist state. We were the sick man of Europe. We had to go to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout because we were failing. We've been in worse situations before, and it's easy to be black-pilled. It's easy to be negative. It's easy to say it's all over. But the reason why people say those things is because, A, they're a coward, and it's easier to admit defeat than fight. And a lot of people have been browbeaten over decades that they can't see a way out of it. And I can easily see a way out of it. All you've got to do is stick your head above the clouds, a dark cloud, and you can see a brighter tomorrow. It just seems hard at the moment because we're living through it. But this will be seen as a blip in this island nation's history. It's a blip. We're going to get over it. The sooner we realize that, the sooner we're going to get over it.
I would say it's interesting what you've mentioned in terms of people can't see a way out, because when people can't see a way out, the person who shows them the way is leadership, through leadership, right? I think that's why leadership is so important. And most people do therefore rely on politicians, for example, to show that leadership, right? The prime minister, whatever. So I think what this also demonstrates, if a lot of people in this country are feeling that, they're also feeling lack of leadership, lack of vision. And when people in politics have said they're going to do something, and shown the vision, then the reason why people still are feeling demotivated is because they don't believe they don't believe the politician. So yeah, that person is playing a good game, but they're like, because we don't believe you, we're still blind, because we still don't feel we can come out of this. And the fact is, you only get what you put up with, right? If we continue to put up with stuff, this is what we're going to get. And you are absolutely right that the more basically what we're doing is we're diluting the people who are in this country, who are the skilled people, who are the intelligent people, who are the leaders, and we're going to put them off from coming here or staying here. And what we're going to be left with is even worse. And if this continues, there'll be a snowball impact. And what we ideally need is a snowball impact in the other direction, i.e. attracting more skilled people, people who do have a vision, who do have the right traits to be a leader, to get us out of the pickle that we're in. And I think, of course, we need both, basically. We need strong citizens and people, and we need strong leadership. Oh God, yeah, it does seem like it's we're in a pickle. I would say that
it does. It does. But let me emphasize one point you just made. It was a great point. You said we need stronger citizens. And that's what we all can concentrate on doing. Not all of us can set up political parties or lobby our MPs or organise demonstrations or raise money to take governments to court. Hardly anyone can do that. But you can be a stronger citizen, can't you? You can be a better version of you. You can beg less off the state. You can raise your children better. You can stop agreeing with lies that you know are lies because you're a bit of a coward. All those things we can change within ourselves. And if 70 million people just change a little bit, that's a tsunami of change. And politicians then can't pull the wool over our eyes just as easy as they do now, because we'll all be stronger individuals and we'll be more intelligent and smarter and less likely, to take bribes or take the easy route, because we want a better tomorrow. It all starts with better citizens.
But do you also feel like there's a bit of divide and conquer going on as well, deliberately? So, for example, even when stuff isn't Islamophobia, what I see is more, it's actually those people who are white on the left side who are talking about Islamophobia. Like, it's their propaganda, right? And of course, naturally, there will be some weak Muslims who will latch on to that because they also are weak and they don't want to take any responsibility, right? So I do feel as if like there's a divide and conquer strategy going on. And I would say that, yes, we as citizens need to be stronger individually, but we also need to unite, and because we are way stronger if we work together. So what my aim through my channel is to dispel some myths and also be honest about, where there are people doing stuff who happen to share the same race and religion as me, for example, I'm not going to hesitate to call these people out, because that's another myth, that, we won't want to call people out of our own race and religion. And also, I want to inspire other people to do the same. And I am getting more and more supporters from the Muslim background, the Pakistani background, who are doing that slowly and slowly. It will take lots of courage from them, because naturally, you'll know this, right? The community of people, Pakistanis and Muslims generally, are very intolerant. They're not used to criticism. They're not used to criticizing each other. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to dispel some myths. I'm trying to unite the country in my own way, to be a bridge between different communities of the West, basically, and the people who have come here, and also inspire other people. So I'm trying to do that in my way, but we all need to seriously unite, because people are just going to take advantage of us, right? Yeah. The politicians or other people outside this country who don't care about us, and they keep banging on about colonialism as an excuse. And, this country's getting its payback for all the shit it's done in the world. I hear that all the time, even in comments. And I feel sad when people say that, because I feel like, are you really blaming the people today for what their ancestors may or may not have done? Because all our ancestors, if we look back far enough, all our ancestors, regardless of race and religion, have done something which I'm sure was very bad. And I wouldn't want to be blamed for what my ancestors, I haven't even met them, right? Who was here 100 years ago? I don't care. Like, I don't know these people. So would I want people to blame me for that? So I do feel sad when people try to justify the downfall of this country because of the past. How does that make you feel when people talk about colonialism?
Yeah, 2 points. The first point is we need to understand why we have these ideologies in the first place and why they're being promoted. We have external enemies. We've always had external enemies. We've been fighting Russia for 200 years. And we've had a Cold War with Russia, a few decades ago. Russia have been, and we've been doing exactly the same to them, by the way, and meddling in our affairs. We've got former KGB agents on record on YouTube talking about their plan of how to disrupt the West, make the West hate themselves. And if you get the people turning against each other, that's an easier country to conquer when the war comes. Now, Russia's a nobody anymore now. But China, we'll have a war with China in our lifetime. That war's coming. China plays the long game like Russia plays it very well. They've been interfering in our politics and our country for a long time. Hence why we have these movements. And you're right, it's divide and conquer. Because, an ununited country is quite easy to defeat. Now, the people we have useful idiots in this country who don't think they're working for China and Russia, and but they're doing some of their work for them unknowingly, and that comes down to some of the gender ideology, the nutcases who think a man can become a woman, some of the race baiting stuff. and then talk about empire as well. What I say to people who talk about empire, if they're Black African or African descent, I say to them, well, it was the British Empire who stopped your ancestors selling your other ancestors, including your family, into slavery in the first place. White people didn't go to Africa and capture Black Africans. White slave ships went to African ports where Black African kings had raided their neighbours' land and enslaved thousands of people and sold them. And they'd been doing it thousands of years before a white man ever turned up in Africa. This was African culture at the time. And what at the time is going on today. There's more Black African slaves alive today than ever before in the world, because it's still going on. The British Empire was, if you had to rate the most successful, beneficial empires ever to exist in the world, the British Empire would be at number one by far. Was it perfect? No. But was anything perfect 100, 200 years ago? No, it wasn't. We seem to think that the British Empire invaded countries. We never invaded any countries, really. What we did, we turned up and we got the people living in those countries to work for the British Empire. This tiny island couldn't conquer India. Indian Rajas all got together and supported the British, and that's how we conquered India. But these are just excuses. We don't talk about the Ottoman Empire, do we? The Muslim Ottoman Empire, that killed loads of people, enslaved other Muslims. We don't talk about the Vikings, do we? Raping and pillaging across Europe, taking slaves. That's where the word slave comes from the word Slav, because the Eastern Europeans made up nearly all the slaves of the world at that time, because the Vikings were taking them. But people don't know their history. And the reason why we don't know our history is because our schools don't teach us history. They teach us an ideology. They teach us that the British Empire was bad. The Nazis were bad. Don't be a Nazi. But again, we don't understand who the Nazis were. The Nazis were socialists. I've studied what Hitler wrote about and his plan. There were nearly all socialist agendas: old age pension, imposing rental prices on properties, confiscating businesses. He may not have implemented everything he wanted to do, but he was a socialist. He called himself a socialist. He was just a different type of socialist. He wanted a socialist just for his country, where communists want socialism for the world. He was just particular who he wanted it for. But we don't know any of this. And we're being told all the time, England is racist, Britain's racist, white people are racist. And if it wasn't for the West, we would be living in a utopia. But it's far from the truth. If it wasn't for this little country, there'd be no modern world. It'd be mass starvation. There'd be no medicine, no science, no internet, no planes. If it wasn't for this tiny, tiny little island. And we need to understand our history so we can be proud of it. And then we can celebrate it. And then we can be a prouder nation.
And I would say I agree with that, because, there have been lots of empires, and that's how people used to live. Like, people used to colonize other areas. And if British wouldn't have colonized, for example, India, and India is my heritage, then, someone else would have colonized. I'm not saying it's right, but that's just the way things happened at the time. And can I ask you, do you think two questions. Do you think there is jealousy amongst people out of Britain and British people? And it's actually they speak out of jealousy more than anything. And then also, do you feel as if they're using that jealousy to basically make English people feel bad about themselves and their history? So it's like a form of psychological warfare. They're trying to start over here, right? Make you, if you're English, make you feel bad, demotivated, run down, like emotionally, because once they could get that, the rest will follow. You'll just basically collapse, and you'll become so weak, in terms of this country, that you will ruin yourself. Do you feel there's something like that going on?
There is. Have you heard of someone called Thomas Sowell in America? He's an American academic. Very, very clever man. Is a Black American, very clever man. Someone asked him a few years ago, what can the Jews do to reduce the amount of hate they get? And he said, easy, fail. If the Jews started failing in things they were doing, suddenly they won't be hated as much, because Jews are hated because of their success. Now, it's the same with England and the United Kingdom. Why do certain countries hate us? Some of it will be obvious. We've had wars with many countries. Argentina hates us because the Falklands Wars. We had a war with France that lasted over 100 years. So sometimes there's legacies of that. But part of it is because countries look at this tiny, tiny little island and say, wow, look what you achieved. You had the biggest empire the world has ever seen. You created the modern world. You ran my country and you left a fantastic government system, trains, legal system, and all from this little tiny, tiny country. That makes me feel a little bad about my country and my people and my culture. But do you know what? It makes me feel better if I can say you cheated. You cheated because you were evil and you used force and you killed people and you committed atrocities and you stole all your wealth. And none of that's true. But it makes those individuals around the world feel better about their country and their culture and their history. That the only reason the UK was successful because they cheated. It turns out the reason why we were successful was for completely different reasons altogether. Hard work, Christian values, the Protestant work ethic came along. The fact we're an island and we wanted to explore and we had ships already. All those things contributed to us going around the world and building an empire. And then at home, creating all the medicines, all the science that came out of this island. People are jealous. And it's an easy way not to take personal responsibility for your country, your culture, and your people by looking at the UK going, they cheated. That's the only reason why they were successful.
I would say, I think that, of course, with any kind of colonialism, whether it's British Empire or Ottoman Empire or any other empire out there, of course, we can't run from the fact that millions of people did die. And there were atrocities, of course, that were committed. And when in these kind of situations, there is money that's looted and stolen, and all that has happened as well. Can I ask you? I've completely forgotten the question I was going to ask now. I've got so many questions for you. So, but when you've got people coming here from those countries, for example, who feel like they were ripped off and they're coming here, and is there a part of you that feels, okay, they've come here because, okay, their ancestors have been part of or have contributed in some way? Or like, what are your feelings towards those people coming from the Commonwealth backgrounds?
The Commonwealth as an organisation now needs to be disbanded. I think the UK needs to leave the Commonwealth. It's a waste of time. What do I feel about people coming here? If they're coming here now and over the last decade, then they need to go home. It's as simple as that. If you arrived in the last decade, you need to go home. Our door's closed now. You was only a guest in the first place. And guests, by definition, means this isn't your permanent home and you're here as a guest, so go home. We've imported so many people who hate us, who hate this country, or at best are apathetic and have no love for it, because we're now seen either as a hotel, an international hotel, or an economic zone. So people come here not to call it home, not to lay roots here. They come here because it's better than where I'm from. And if somewhere else is better than here and I can get there, then I'm going there. And those people are basically international gypsies. No, they don't have a home. They're just traveling around the world looking for a better life. And part of me understands why they do that. But I don't want people like that living in my country, because I only want patriots in this country, people who love this country, people, when there's a war, who will sign up and fight for this country. I don't want people going, oh yeah, I live here, but it's not my war, mate. It's not my war. I had these conversations in the 80s with some of my friends who were of Irish descent. And one of them said to me, if there was a war between the UK and Ireland, he'd sign up to Ireland. And I'm like, you were born here. You've been to school here. You've bought your first house here. This country has given you everything. But yet you feel if there was a war, you would fight for Ireland. I couldn't get my head around that. And I still can't. I've heard the same things from Pakistani kids, Bangladeshi kids, African kids.
There's no love for the country, and I question this as well. Like, God forbid. I mean, you mentioned that you feel we're going to see a war with China sometime in our lifetime. I don't want to see any war. Obviously, I'm sure you don't either. But like that, I have questioned a few times actually. If God forbid we're in that situation where we go to war, that is when people's true colors will show. You know, are they going to give their life? Are they willing to give their life for this country? And if actually this country happens to be going to war against their heritage country, what's going to happen then, right? I do question that as well in terms of what, because I don't know what's going to happen in this country. Because the last time we had a war in this country, World War I, World War II, predominantly the people in this country shared the same race, religion, everything, right? That's not the case anymore. And we've got social media, we've got the internet where the communication and all that is, everything's blurred now. And the mode of transport and everything's changed, basically. The world has changed completely. So I have asked that question as well. One final question for yourself, please. Do you feel, obviously there's an element of some people feeling that the wounds are still, they're still alive, basically, for some people in terms of colonialism. And I've experienced that each time I've gone to Pakistan, for example, and the last time I went was like 8 years ago. Like, they still feel that it's still raw, basically, the wounds. So there are those types of people still coming here. And then other people blaming British for other things. But do you feel that nowadays, like if we look at the last 20 years, do you feel Britain, because it has intervened, for example, in the Middle East with America, and also in countries like Pakistan, for example, Pakistan is a country where America does not allow a democratic process. It doesn't allow Pakistani people to vote for the person that they want. They want Imran Khan. And America has installed a puppet government that the Pakistani people don't want. And that government is just doing what America wants, not what is in the best interest of Pakistani people. And therefore, the country is continuing to be shit and will be for the future because they're not being given a fair chance. Then those people are coming here. Do you really expect then those people to care about Britain? Like, what are your thoughts about that? Do you feel our government and the way it's been operating the last couple of decades has a big part to play in all of this?
Oh, yes. Post-Second World War, we've interfered in far too many countries with wars and behind the scenes. Some of it you can understand. There was a Cold War at the time. We were fighting Russia and we had lots of proxy wars in Asia and Africa. That's what the Vietnam War was basically about. But then since then, we're looking at the Middle East. Why do we interfere? Because let's be honest, most politicians don't even understand the complexities of those areas. We don't understand the tribal instincts of those areas. We think they're a country. They're not countries. They're a collection of tribes, and some of those tribes and clans are split along borders. So, because we created those countries after the First World War, a lot of them. So we don't understand the people. We don't understand the culture. Part of us don't want to understand them because we look down upon them as inferior to us and you'll do as you're told, which is okay if you're willing to back it up with military force. But we're not anymore now. So we need to stop interfering in those countries and we must allow them to run the countries they want to run. That's why I don't even criticize the Taliban in Afghanistan about how they're treating women. Who am I to tell a foreign country how they should run their country? I may disagree with it, but it's not my business. It's up to the people who live in Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban and to have a better country. We spent 20 years and trillions of dollars there. And did we make any impact? No, we haven't. We keep spending foreign aid in loads of countries. Does it make anything better? No, it doesn't. We keep sending our armies to the Middle East. We make everything worse. And when we leave those countries with millions of people dead, we then wonder why the people there suddenly hate us. Well, if Iraq invaded the UK because we've got a grooming gang scandal here and our politicians are covering up, so if Iraq invaded to help us uncover the grooming gang scandal, I wouldn't be thankful to Iraq. I'd be going, you're the enemy here, mate. This is my country. I'll sort my country out. Thank you very much. I don't need you invading. And if those countries get worse and have civil wars and kill millions of each other, part of me goes, well, that's what you're entitled to do. Because until some of these countries and some of these clans and tribes have a bloodletting and wipe each other out, there'll never be peace. How do you think we got peace in the Western world? It was about mass murder, slaughtering our enemies. That's why we've still got the Palestine-Israel problems going on, because Israel is never allowed to wipe them all out. If they wiped out every single Palestinian, which I'm not saying they should do, but if they did, there'd be no more trouble. And that's what some of these Middle Eastern countries need to do. They need to sort themselves out, and we need to let them do it, unless they then start interfering and creeping their problems closer to the UK. Then there's a national interest. But until that happens, we need to give people and countries the room, and the room to make mistakes, the room to commit atrocities, the room to learn how to be a better nation. And when we use the phrase better nation, what we really mean is more like the West, more like Britain. But you know what? There's many things in my country I don't think anybody should be copying. So we need to stop holding ourselves up as the way you should run a country. We need to leave it to the people in those countries to run it the way they see fit. And if they're running it the wrong way, the people need to overthrow that government and start again until they get the government that suits everybody. We just need to stop interfering in other people's lives.
And sorry, you mentioned Palestine, Israel, and a lot of times Britain is blamed for the cause of this whole situation over 7 decades, when apparently Britain promised the land to 3 different people, including the French, I believe, and that included the Palestinian people at the time as well. So do you feel as if that is the reason why we can't side completely with a one-state solution where it's all Israel, and actually it's our responsibility to support a 2-state solution to give that a go? What is your thoughts about this? Do you think we've started this, and what should we do now?
Mine's is easy. I don't care if we started it or didn't start it 70 years ago. Ancient history now. It's a foreign country with foreign people on a foreign continent. I don't care. I don't care if Israel survives. I don't care if Palestine survives. I don't care if we have a greater Israel. I don't care if we have a 2-state solution. Not my problem. I don't care. And I can't have had that rant a minute ago about how we need to keep out of other people's problems and countries and then suddenly have a different opinion on Israel and Palestine. I don't care. Not going to get involved. Don't care.
And do you feel as if that is how the majority of people in this country feel, where the citizens are just so tired now? They're just so tired. We're like, we've got so many issues in our country, let alone worrying about other people's countries. Although what's happening is awful. My prayers are with anyone all around the world in any kind of war situation or anything bad going on. And I've got everyone in my prayers, regardless of race and religion. I feel what I sense is people are just so tired now because they're tired of our politicians meddling in other people's affairs. They're tired of our politicians creating issues for us, right? Whether those issues were created, 100 years ago, 7 decades ago, or even now, where they're just not listening to what we want. And we're just feeling down and weak, basically, right? Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, foreign policy is a way for mediocre politicians to get a foot on the world stage and look a little bit like Churchill. That's all international politics is all about. If we're going to interfere in someone else's country, don't you think we shouldn't be having girls being gang raped in this country first? Don't you think if we're going to interfere in another country, don't you think our finances in this country should be spot on to begin with, and we're not trillions in debt, and we're not cancelling pensioners' winter fuel allowance? We've got that much going wrong in this country. How do we think anyone else in any other part of the world is ever going to listen to us? I wouldn't listen to us if I was living in the Sudan or I was living in Bangladesh. Why am I listening to you? Because you've not got a decent country anyway anymore now. So we need to start concentrating on ourselves. Our politicians are elected to represent the people of that country, and they keep forgetting that, and we keep interfering in other people's business because it's a distraction technique. If we can say to the British public, oh, look, Colonel Gaddafi's about to invade this city and there's going to be 10,000 people dead, shall we bomb it? And everyone goes, well, to save 10,000 people in Benghazi, yeah, bomb it. And it's like, well, they don't want you talking about how unemployment's out of control in this country. They don't want you talking about the NHS is failing and how doctors don't know a man from a woman and are chopping the breasts off healthy girls because you think she's a boy. But they want you talking about foreign wars, foreign interference. They want you talking about terrorism because They can't be blamed for terrorism per se. So therefore, you have your mind on these external problems. Dictators do this all the time. Every dictator is at war with a neighboring country because it's the only way to get your population to do as it's told. And that means I'm saving you from him. You might think I'm bad, but he's worse than me and I'm going to save you from him. Our politicians do the same sort of thing with distraction. Look at that country. Look how bad they are. Don't look at what we're doing here, though.
So they are trying to basically make us look the other way,
yes.
Distract us. Yeah, that's the old trick, isn't it? Distract, basically. Oh my God, do you know what? This interview was very interesting. We've covered so many different angles, and I'm sure the viewers would love this. Is there anything that you'd like to say in the close?
I think to everybody, and I know you've got international viewers, but everything I said about we English men applies to everybody. You know, it applies to women and it applies to men of the world. Be a better version of yourself. You can't be someone else. So stop trying to be that person you admire. All you can do is be a better version of you, the better version of who you were yesterday. Be slightly stronger, take more responsibility, look after your family, your community, your country, just a tiny, tiny bit more. Because if everyone does that, the change that we can have for these countries and our countries will be massive. What we need to stop doing is always looking for someone else to solve our problems, because the people who want to solve our problems for us are the people who we should never let anywhere near power to solve our problems.
Thank you so much for coming, Nick, and hopefully we will see you back on this channel
Anytime.
in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.